USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
Well, I was born and raised in Bradley, Illinois. I'm a farm boy. And there was low income, and then there was the other down there, and it was the other down there. And played varsity football for 2 years. Coach was a former Marine, hit every island except Iwo in the Pacific. Locker room plastered with Marine Corps posters. Didn't realize it until joining the Marine Corps. Our fitness program was paralleled the Marine Corps' fitness program. Virtually every one of us on that varsity football team that went in the military did go in the Marine Corps. Again, Coach Lemon was this big barrel-chested guy, and he just absolutely chesty, and he just commanded respect. Just his presence commanded respect. And his calves were as big as my thighs. And every respect for that man. No brothers and sisters. Had a father that was Army Air Corps that was training at a base near where we lived. And my mother met him, and she became pregnant, and he was killed in an accident on base. And so that was the extent of father. Now, yes, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. Would I have enlisted in the Marine Corps had there not been a draft? Probably not. I'd have probably went on a totally different path. But because there was a draft, I chose the Marine Corps. So in reality, I look at any of us enlistees during that time as enlistee draftees. Okay. Now, I had a small high school class, 98 boys in that class. Of that 98, 26 were in the military because of the draft. A third of my class, 30% of my class, was military. I was on the one corner of the block. I was wounded. You go down to the very next corner of the next block. Tiny Sample was killed in Vietnam. You go up one block. Ron Wagner spent 17 years in the Army Reserve. You go up another block. John Holland was killed in Vietnam. You go over a half a block. Mike Keltner died from Agent Orange, and Al Vining died from Agent Orange. You go over another half a block. Bobby Lowy was wounded so badly he never did come back home. So our little blue-collar area there paid an awful price during Vietnam. As far as boot went, I knew I was going in the Marine Corps. I prepared myself, getting physically fit to do it. We boarded a plane in Chicago, east of the Mississippi, headed for Parris Island. But this was at a time when the Marine Corps came out with a 2-year enlistment, no reserve. Also, we were inducting from the Army into the Marine Corps. I saw a lot of guys break down because they were brought in a room and we fell in behind them, and then they were notified that they were now in the Marine Corps. They weren't ready for that. They weren't physically or mentally ready for that. But they didn't know I existed in the platoon until physically and marching and such, until at the rifle range. And the company gunny came out and said anyone that meet or beat his rifle record on the rifle range, he would buy a beer. And I went out there and I know I beat it. I don't know if you know what a Maggie drawers is. Maggie drawers is when you miss the target. They wave a flag, okay? I had 5 Maggie's drawers at the 500 mark, which is my best. I had a small group, and when they put a stick with a round circle in whatever hole you've made, and these sticks were over each other. And I know for a fact I scored more than 234, which was his score. But that's what I scored. So we get back to the Quonset hut. Up comes the gunny. I fall out. We're walking across the little parade deck. He says, unbutton your top button, because you always, recruits, had your top button. We walked into the NCO club, up to the bar, sat down. I had people looking at me like, what the hell? He bought me a beer, marched me back, and then they took me to the DI's tent, and they just reamed me good. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Da 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 da. And then they wanted to recruit me for sniper school. And at that time, I would have had to enlist for another year to be able to go to the school and still do a tour of duty in Vietnam. And I chose not to. I'd gotten married in August before I went to Vietnam in October. So my focus was on doing a tour and getting home. You are given an MOS, and my MOS was go to driving school. And I went and learned to drive a deuce and a half, a 5-ton, and the Mighty Mite, which is a Marine Corps version of the Jeep. And I got a military driver's license. And same with Bill, the fellow I went in the buddy program with. We both went through driver school. We flew over, we hit Okinawa. We're there a day. And we got on that plane to leave Okinawa, and as we're going down the runway, there was just a B-52 after a B-52 after a B-52. They were all facing you, and it looked very ominous. They are, especially when they're just about wingtip to wingpick, they're loaded, the wings are down. Anyway, I got a serious moment happen there, like this is going to be some serious stuff, just watching those B-52s, looking at those B-52s. Got in country, and Da Nang in October of '66 really didn't exist. And the receiving area and where you were directed as to what unit you were with was on the other side of the runway. We got there, we got in a cattle car, we went over to the other side. We were put up in tents. And during that night, F-4s were taken off. And being in country, you know nothing, especially being an FNG, okay? You knew nothing. Those F-4s taking off, you didn't know if they were taking off because the base is getting overrun, whatever. And your eyes are like this, and you're thinking, I don't have a weapon. I don't have a weapon. And then nothing happens. The next day, I was assigned to a D-211. And I said, what is that? I said, a 105 artillery battery. And I said, you got this all wrong. I'm a truck driver. I'm back here, And Bill got assigned to Amtrak's, so much the buddy plan. And so the Marine Corps was kind enough to charter a CH-34 helicopter for me to take me out to 211, and which was at a base of a hill just northwest of Chulai. And I was issued a weapon and ammunition. So all these guns lined up, don't know a thing about artillery, hadn't been close to artillery. And during the night, there's a fire mission. Here the guns start going off. I am up out of that rack. I am a magazine in that 14. I am locked and loaded. I'm ready to do business. I didn't know what the hell was going on. If we're getting overrun again, I don't know. So then that subsided, and so those first couple of nights kind of set the tone for for you. The second night, I was in the battery. I got assigned to outpost duty. And you have a perimeter outpost, and these OPs are made out of sandbags, and you're watching the countryside. And I stayed on OP duty for 54 days straight, which means maybe 2 or 3 hours when you were off trying to get some sleep. You did your day, and then you went in, and then you did the OP. I got to the point where I was having my mother and my wife send me No Doze. I got to the point where I was hallucinating. I was seeing tree lines turn into dinosaurs. I was looking down at other OPs and seeing pointy hats there, and I knew they couldn't have been there. And then we had any villages that we would move into the area by. We were the ones responsible for doing the patrols through the villages. We were our own grunts because the grunts were out doing grunt stuff, but we had to protect ourselves. And we had an LP, which is a listening post about maybe 25, 50 yards out. And they had a radio, and they'd go out and they'd lay. And during the night, at least once or twice, an officer or staff NCO would come out and tour the outpost to make sure everything's good. Well, this one LP had fallen asleep. And so a guy from the OP went out trying to wake him up. He didn't want him to get in trouble. Well, he woke up right before the guy got to him. He shot him and killed him. Just like a small weapon, a 105 artillery piece can have a jam. And there was a 3-prong piece that you slapped in there and you pulled it out. Everything was hustle when there was a fire mission because there were Marines out there that needed that support. They were in trouble. That's when they call you, is when they're in trouble. And this one of the prongs was broken off this extractor. A guy slipped it in there and pulled it. And when he did it, he hit the primer and blew the shell out backwards and took much of his forearm off. You're getting introduced to that type of thing. At the same time, I was close to gun 1, and the 05 artillery shell has a canister and it has 7 bags of powder in it. Depending on the fire mission and where the round is going, you leave all 7 if it was maximum, which is 8 miles, or you take powder bags out depending. And I would work gun 1, and I would be the one that took the powder bags out of the canister. They had a string in between them, and they just drop them down the side of the canister. And then the guy would put the projectile on it, be it a high explosive, illumination, Willie Peter. As soon as that projectile got on it, he'd cut that string. I would pick it up, hand it to the guy that stuffed it in the tube, and the lanyard would be pulled and it would be fired. We could actually fire 10 rounds out of that gun in a minute. 10 rounds in a minute. So I was a grunt. I was also a cannon cocker. I went over as a truck driver. The mechanic, only one man that was mechanic for all the vehicles there, was from Illinois also. We got to be friends. I was a gearhead before I went to Vietnam. I helped him do stuff when he needed help. And he said, hey, if you want to get your MOS changed, you can take over as the battery mechanic. So I took, I had my MOS changed to 3516 mechanic. So I became responsible for all the vehicles in the battery. On January 13th, which was a Friday of 1967, we got hit. They came in. They were in all 3 lines of wire, ready to blow it. There was a VC at the bottom of the OP that had the .50 caliber on it, If they'd have got that 50 caliber turned around, we would have been overrun. Luckily, we caught it, and that night, the VC, they lost 16. We captured 4. The next morning, we were a short distance from Highway 1, which is just a dirt road. The engineers had built a road going to Highway 1 up to the hill. They were at the top of the hill. We were around the base of the hill. And one of the engineers' trucks came down, hit they believe it was a 500-pound round. Whenever our rounds didn't go off, they scavenged them and made bombs out of them. And it destroyed that. It was a dump truck. It blew that bed off of it and killed 2 Marines. It was just Hill 54. It was at Hill 54, northwest of Chulai. That's all we knew it as. We left there, and we hooked up all 6 guns, and we trailered them up to Tam Ky, Vietnam. We went up to Tam Ky. We got up there late morning, early afternoon, and during that setting up, a friend of mine, James David Borawski, he had put up a lean-to, and I didn't help him put it up. I wanted to rest. And so I took a break, and Ski set up a lean-to. Well, that night it came time and to set up the racks. Ski offered to set up under the lean-to, and I said, no, I'm going to sleep out here underneath the stars. I said those very words because I felt guilty about him putting it up and me not helping him. Well, just right outside of that lean-to, I set my rack. Frank, another good friend of ours, set his up right behind me, but he was going across. And Ski drew watch that night. Whenever you pulled into an area, you had to have guards, and basically those guards walked the area. You didn't have any outposts set up. You had a guard walking around. Ski pulled guard duty. He made a round. He came and he sat down, and right as he sat down, the first mortar of a 42 mortar round attack landed. It killed Ski and wounded me. The second round landed right behind Frank, messed Frank's back up pretty bad. And I grabbed Ski, I yelled for the corpsman, and Frank was taken, Ski was taken. I did not realize I was wounded until someone called it to my attention. I went over to the corpsman's tent. Ski was laying outside. I went in and he pulled some shrapnel out and patched up my leg. And I went back. It wasn't. I thought Ski had died, and he was there, but he actually didn't die until they got him to the hospital in Da Nang and was pronounced dead. Now, since I was his best friend, his mother had written a letter to the CO. They had not been talking when he went to Vietnam. She was feeling guilty. She wanted to know if he said anything about her. He called me in to respond to that letter. Also, I had to jump on that 34 chopper and fly into Da Nang to identify Ski's body at the Naval Hospital at the morgue. Now, I've been out in the field, okay? I flew into Da Nang. I had a helmet. I had a flak jacket. I had my M14. I had extra grenades. I had extra magazines. My utilities were faded. My boots were white. I went to the Naval Hospital. I visited with Frank. I went across. I went and identified Ski. That's a picture that was seared in my mind. The man walked beside me, behind me. I heard this locker door open. I turned. It was a huge locker. The walls, racks, 2 racks down in the center, and the floor was all body bags. It was solid body bags. He walked through, he stepped over some guys, he was looking at name tags, he found him, and I identified Ski. I walked out of there. I went to the Air Force Club. I heard there's an Air Force Club with cold beer. I went there. I was pretty much out of it after doing that with Ski, visiting Frank and doing that. They didn't want to let me in the Air Force Club because I had a weapon, but they did. I heard about a Navy club. I hitched a ride to the Navy club. I was already pretty well. Had a few beers, hadn't had any beers in a long time. Got to this Navy club, and there was this halo of light and all of these bodies. And so I elbowed my way through up to this chicken wire around it and looked in, and there was two Australian strippers. And one was in the center of the floor, and a Navy guy was on his knees with his hands behind his back, and he was unzipping the zipper on her little skirt with his teeth. And my knees just started wobbling. I hadn't seen a round eye, I'm just, and then boom, plywood comes down, and it's all covered up, and I don't know what's going on. And I start to leave, and I walk, and there's all of these Navy guys in a line, and I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Oh man, don't you know it's a red alert, we're getting hit." And I thought, shit, if you're getting hit, you're dead. I'm the only one that's going to live. I've got the weapon, I've got the ammunition. You're having to check out your weapon, okay? And you're in these pretty green uniforms, utilities with polished boots. And so the next day, I went to the big PX that they had built since I'd been there. They had a theater that had been built since I'd been there, and they had a USO club. And I went to those, and I could have stretched that out for another few days. I just didn't fit into that environment. I got on a chopper, and I went back to my environment. That's where I was comfortable. The next significant thing that happened was the middle of May. They brought those 5th Marines out of the field in, and they brought us an artillery over, and they introduced the M16. And they're down there demonstrating it and how it came apart and how it went together and so on and so forth. And they issued it to the grunts. They did not issue it to artillery. We kept our M14s. 2 weeks later, they dropped those Marines in a hot LZ, and every one of those weapons malfunctioned. 32 Marines died in that hot LZ. They kept bringing in people to try to get them out, and their weapons failed. And as I mentioned, I have pictures of those choppers and those stretchers going out to those choppers. And there's controversy whether that stuff actually happened or not. It did. I went over and I was looking at those dead Marines, and there was one Marine, big German fella, blonde hair, arms crossed across his chest, didn't have a visible wound, and he reminded me of a fella I played football with, Kraut. And at that moment, I had an epiphany. All the Vietnamese in this country are not worth this one man's life. From what I saw, up to 7 months are not worth this one man's life. I'd already seen 12 people die, and you add another 32 to that, that's 44 Marines. And they, for what? I didn't see it. I didn't see it in that country. And from that point on, my mission was to survive and to leave that country. I was no longer there for patriotic reasons. Serving my country, saving these people, I wasn't there for that after that. I was there to rotate and to leave. You have any questions for me?
Well, tell us a little bit about the presidential unit citations. What were they, and how often were they awarded?
We moved into what was called the Quezon Valley area. The Quezon Valley was a very hotly contested area, and those presidential unit citations are all unit citations that were awarded for what we did in that valley. But 3 presidential units is pretty much unheard of. The only thing I can remember of that whole time is we moved into an area, and I had 54 days left in the Marine Corps. We moved, and traditionally, when you set up a sandbag around your tent, you weave them. You put one across and then 2 going the other way, and you weave these, makes a good solid wall. And we got there, and I'm old in country, I'm salty, and I just make my sandbags and stack them on top of each other. Okay. During the night, we had a guy walking perimeter, a newbie, an FNG. I'm in my rack, sleeping, of course, yeah, and which never happened. There was never REM sleep over there. Sleep deprivation was a major problem over there. And I heard this thump, thump, and I sat up on the rack and I said, "Did you hear that?" to the guy walking. He says, "Hear what?" "Thump, thump." And I said, "Yell incoming." I rolled over into my foxhole, and the first round hit, it was mortar, first round hit right in front of my wall, caved it in, went through the side of my tent, right where my head was at, up through the roof of the tent. I thought, you know, in my tent, my foxhole was full of water, so I'm there in this wet foxhole. And after the mortar stopped, I yelled out, "God damn it, don't they know this shit could kill me?" And, 54 days left, and the whole place just broke out in laughter. I forgot to mention OP1. One morning, we had an APC with 10 guys in it come by, and our road was elevated, and they went down, and they probably didn't go 30, 40 yards and hit a mine. Killed everyone in that APC. I was on OP1. And it sat there for several hours before another APC came out, and they took those Marines and loaded them on top of this other APC and came back, and there it goes right past OP1, and that's where the other 10 veterans happened. So,
what do you think we learned, if we learned anything from that conflict?
What the military learned is, one, you don't send somebody over only to have them dispersed as one person, that rotation system. You don't send them back as one person. And you don't not give them some kind of recognition when they come home. The other thing people don't realize about the Vietnam veteran, we didn't leave it in Vietnam. It was there every night on TV for us. You think it was bad for you, the civilian? It was worse for us that had been there. It's just an instant replay that just kept playing and playing for years. It kept, for me, from 1967 to 1973, it kept replaying, body counts and such. And so now, after Vietnam, you flew over as a unit. You came home as a unit. You were met at the airport with your family as your recognition. So there were things that were learned from Vietnam that have never happened before, never happened since Vietnam.
Final words on Vietnam that could be summing anything up for you.
I guess, and you're going to get this from just about every Vietnam veteran you talk to, there's absolutely no reason that we would want to do it again. We just, you know, we shouldn't want to do it again. But you ask just about every Vietnam veteran, and he says, I would do it again. Why? Because of the brotherhood. The brotherhood is the only good thing to come out of Vietnam. It's the brotherhood. And the intensity of what that year was, unable really to communicate it to anyone, but still, we would do it again. It was a privilege to serve with the young men I served with.